Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 9th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'd like to remind everyone the board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Petitioners should try their best to limit presentations to 10 minutes. Use variance require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the request variance. Non-use variance requests a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variance. In the absence of a full board at tonight's meeting, petitioners have the ability to request that their agenda be postponed until future meeting due to the circumstance. Petitioners must inform the vice chairperson after staff's presentation and the public hearing to do so. And as you only have 8 out of 9 board members, so we are down a person. Maybe we'll have 9 next month. Maybe we'll have 8 again. Who knows? So we'll let everyone have a choice after we go through each agenda item. First thing off is call to order. So please state who you are and where you're calling or where you're zooming in from. We'll start off with you, Mr. Reddy.
Hi, I'm Arvin Reddy here in Royal Oak.
Ms. George.
Maggie George here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Klatt.
Ms. Klatt, Royal Oak.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Ofak. Nancy Robinson, Royal Oak.
Mr. Gavin.
Rob Gavin, Royal Oak.
Ms. Zukin.
Deborah Zukin, Royal Oak.
And Mr. Moore.
Travis Moore in Royal Oak.
And Anthony Ofak in Royal Oak. All right. We don't have any minutes from last night's meeting. And if we did, probably none of us would have had time to read it anyway. So we'll push those approval of those minutes to next month's as well as this one's. So we'll probably have double approval next month, I'm assuming. We didn't have any unfinished business from last night. So that brings us to new business. Case number 21-09-38, 313 East University Avenue. Mr. Murphy, whenever you are ready.
Thanks. This site is located on the north side of East University Avenue, and it's east of Troy Street. It's just north of downtown, and it's improved, as you can see, with a 1.5-story single-family dwelling. And the petitioner is proposing to construct a variety of additions to the rear of the dwelling in order to accommodate additional living spaces. And the additions to the rear of the dwelling, they comply with the setbacks and the total lot coverage under the ordinance. But the petitioner is proposing to construct, and I'll go back to the photograph to give you a point of reference. There is a driveway in the extended side yard of the house, and I'll go back to the elevations to show you that the petitioner is proposing to construct a carport that's attached to the house over the driveway. And the carport is supported by, has a roof line over it, and it's supported by a column opposite side of the house. And that column extends all the way exactly to the property line. We'll refer to the petitioner's drawing in order to get an understanding of exactly where that's at. So this is the driveway, the proposed carport outlined with the support columns. And again, the support columns go all the way to that property line. The zoning ordinance requires that an attached accessory structure, be it a traditional attached garage, or in this case, the proposed attached carport, that it maintain a side yard setback of no less than 5 feet. And again, the petitioner is proposing to extend the carport all the way to the property line, so no setback. They're seeking a variance in order to waive the minimum required setback in order to accomplish placing a carport over the driveway. We did not receive any audio or written public comments for you to consider tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions prior to asking questions of the petitioner.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none, petitioner may introduce themselves and go ahead, state your case. You're muted right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hello, I'm Sue Martin. This is my husband, Larry Martin. We've been college professors. I'm 71, just retired. He's going to retire next year at 73. We bought this home 15 years ago and kept it, even though I took another job that had a house provided. But we loved Royal Oak, and we kept it as a cottage in the city. We love the place, and we always planned to retire there and to age in place. So now we're building this addition, which is all a first floor addition in the back, master bedroom, all of that, so that we can age in place. The proposed carport is actually going to be behind the metal gates that you see in some of the pictures. So it's set back further. Those two poles will be near a neighbor's privacy fence, and then they have arborvitae on the other side. I have met with that neighbor, Mitch, at 309 University Avenue, showed him the detailed plans, explained the variance, and he's fine with it. He actually works in a construction company with his father. So we have talked to the neighbor and reviewed those plans and for purpose. Now, we really are requesting this because we want to age in place. So we don't want to, we're not asking for any big garage or anything. We're just asking for a little shelter as we get older to enable us to get into the house in bad weather. That's it.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioners? Ms. George, then Mr. Clatt.
Mr. Murphy, can you pull up the drawings of not the aerial bird's eye view where the car would be, but the one where it shows what the design of the carport would be? Because I just want to make sure, even though the columns that would be abutting up to the property line, what was the roof structure going to be made out of? And is it not going to go past those columns? Because then it would encroach on the neighbor's property line a little bit, it looks like.
Right. I can answer that. My name is Keith Logsden. I'm an architect with Michael Willoughby and Associates here on behalf of the Martins. So yeah, there will not be a significant overhang on the west side, and it will not project beyond the column.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Clatt.
It kind of leads to my question too. Your plans don't show gutters or downspouts. So if you do, I assume you're going to manage the water, keep it on your site versus having a waterfall feature into your neighbor's yard.
Yeah.
But do you, the gutter would extend past, I assume then, or how do you manage that? Is it an internal drain? Do you have gutters on the opposite ends? It is a flat roof, so just curious.
Well,
Yeah,
I think the architecture firm should answer, yes.
Yeah, I think the idea would be to drain the water north and south and potentially have a gutter on the north and south side. We really haven't kind of gotten to that point yet, but we would not have a gutter on the west side that would project into the other property.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Ms. Robinson.
And the materials being used for the roof, I saw that there was going to be a metal roof, but there's going to be wood framing underneath. The columns will be wood. What materials are you using?
Yes, the columns will either be wood or synthetic. I don't know that we've talked about that specifically, but they'll be painted. The roof structure will also be, aside from the structure itself, it'll be wood that's painted, and the brick piers will be brick to match that on the existing house as close as possible. And the roof line will also be near the proposed roof line of the addition. So it'll be seamless.
Thank you. Anyone else for the petitioner?
One of the things I'd like to point out that's kind of important is that we push the carport far enough to the north where it maintains more than a 10-foot distance between the adjacent house to the west and the proposed carport. So we were purposeful about pushing that back so that it did not come close to the neighbor's home on the west side.
Mr. Gavin.
And as I understand it, the owners have talked to the neighbor to the west, and they're in support of the variance being granted. I don't know, it didn't sound like
Yeah.
you received any communication to that effect, but the owners can speak to that a little bit.
Yep, they stated as such. Mr. Goodman.
So I couldn't tell easily from the drawings. Are you planning on maintaining that gate there and keeping that, the existing one, or is that going away? I couldn't really tell from the drawings.
We're planning on keeping it.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, before we bring it back to the side of the board and discuss anything, know that we don't have a full board. We're missing one person, which may or may not have a full board next month, so it's not guaranteed, but you need 5 affirmative votes to pass. Do you wish for us to discuss and vote, or would you like to delay till next month for possible full board?
Please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to our side of the table. Does anyone have any discussion and or motions? Oh, I thought I saw a hand. Anyone? Mr. Gavin.
I'll move to approve this one as presented.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Moore seconds. Okay, Mr. Gavin, go ahead.
I kind of struggled for a little bit with practical difficulty on this, but I feel like every house I think should be able to have a carport, and that driveway is already really narrow and right up to the property line pretty much anyway. So it'd be very difficult to pull anything off anyway there, unless you have a driveway that goes like the entire length of the property, which just seems silly to me. So, given that and given how it's going to be set back, pretty far behind where that current gate is, and that the neighbors are on board with it, I feel like there is a practical difficulty here with the narrowness of the lot. There is substantial justice would be done to the owners and to the neighbors, since the neighbor doesn't mind. I don't think it will destroy the appearance of that neighborhood, and the narrowness wasn't of the lot wasn't anything that was caused by these owners. It was an existing condition. So given all of those factors, I think this is something that can be approved.
Mr. Moore, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm looking at is I do have a practical difficulty in that they're trying to, make this a place that they can age in place and have it be safe for them in weather and in winter and stuff. I can appreciate that they want to be able to have a safe, covered car location. So I'll support this.
Any other discussion? Ms. Robinson?
I have to say, I really love what they're doing to the house. I mean, the addition, the floor plan, it's really, really great. I have concerns about the fact that it's going right up to the neighbor's property line. And just, then does that inhibit the other neighbor from them to ever build anything that close? I mean, I was thinking about fire issues and also drainage issues, but I understand if they can move that water front or back, I would assume it would have to go to the north, or else it's going to be going into their driveway. Just those were my two concerns about, I understand that the property is that narrow. We all live in those kind of neighborhoods. So that was my only concern.
Anyone else? Colette?
So that's a good question. We don't really have any clause about separation between houses. I know in Birmingham, for example, they do. It's kind of first come, first served. You build your house, you then have to react to that when you build an addition. I don't think we have that here. So this is said, it's not going to impact the neighbor from planning an addition for their home in the future, correct? Thank you.
Else? All right. Well, I'll be in support of this motion. I agree. It is practical difficulty with trying to have that narrow driveway and have some use out of it. And they are very, in doing a carport, you're trying to do that without a garage. So you at least have something covered, because one car garage, you won't have that attached and can't get it attached because of how close it is to the other lot. So in trying to work with that, I totally agree with that practical difficulty. And since it is set far back enough in relation to the neighbor house, I'm not concerned there. So that is my reasoning. And with that, we will move to vote. We'll start off at the bottom this time. Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Zukin,
Yes.
Mr. Gavin,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Klatt,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
I vote yes. So it passes unanimously. Congratulations. Alrighty, we will move on to the next case. Number 2109-39, 1003 Mohawk Avenue. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, this site is located on Mohawk, just south of Lincoln. I'm going to share my screen, and you can see that the site's improved with a 2-story single-family home, and it has a detached garage to the rear. And the dwelling and the adjacent dwellings to the north and to the south, they both, all three have covered front porches which have been enclosed without any records of approval here at City Hall. So this photo provides you a vantage point of the house to the north, and you can also see the photograph of the house to the south. This is the subject property. The petitioner is, staff does not recognize the existing dwelling's enclosed front porch as living space. Doing so would permit a new open covered porch and steps to be constructed to the front of each of these houses. And that cycle can be seen numerous instances throughout the city where it simply further reduces the front yard setback without any prior approval. It should also be noted that the covered enclosed front porch isn't recognized and it's not assessed as living space by the city assessor. It's identified and assessed as an enclosed porch. The zoning ordinance does allow enclosed porches and steps to extend into the front setback no more than 7 feet. So the existing condition, which is again an enclosed front porch, we regard that as non-conforming. And the petitioner is proposing to construct an addition to the front of the existing condition of the house. I'll highlight that this area is the existing enclosed porch, and what's shown here is a proposed floor plan to add or tack on to the front an open covered front porch. Again, an open covered front porch. The petitioner would expand what's currently non-conforming in a non-conforming manner. So they are seeking a variance to expand the non-conforming structure. At its nearest point, the unenclosed front porch and steps may be no closer than 27 feet to the front property line. And this proposal measures 20.5 feet from the west front property line. So the petitioner is seeking a setback from the standard to allow for, again, another open covered porch to be constructed on the front of this dwelling and further reducing the front yard setback. The petitioner has provided a letter of support that's signed by both of the neighbors to the two neighbors to the north and 2 neighbors to the south. We did receive 1 written public comment that's included in the online report, and we did receive 1 voicemail as a public comment that, if the chair finds acceptable, perhaps Ms. Schwinger can play that at this point in time.
evening, Chairperson Oak and members of the zoning board. Let me share my screen and play this for you.
Hi, this is Peggy Goodwin. I am calling regarding case number 210939-1003 Mohawk. I did write in comments, which may have been past the deadline, so I wanted to say that regarding the petition to encroach 13.5 feet of an unenclosed front porch into the 34 feet west front yard setback to expand a nonconforming front porch, I do not believe this is a hardship, as the ZBA requires, or in the best interest of the neighborhood as a whole. Our neighborhood has improved in recent years, and most houses of similar architecture have an enclosed front porch and or a 6-foot deep front unenclosed porch. It appears the petitioner wants to build a deck or even a stage in his front yard. I don't know if you will receive a lot of feedback from the notified area because you have 3 rentals immediately surrounding the house, and you have 2 new homeowners in other houses in the notified area. I have talked with other residents outside the notified area on Mohawk who do not believe this is in the best interest of the neighborhood as a whole or meets the hardship requirement. Thank you so much for your time and service. I appreciate the notification. Peggy Goodwin, 248-376-0390. Thank you.
And that concludes the public comment regarding this matter.
Thank you. All right, is there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Anyone? Well, Ms. George?
So do we know if this current homeowner bought the home as it currently is with that enclosed front porch already existing?
But to the best of my knowledge, we did search through some older photographic records from the assessor's office, which predate the homeowner purchasing the property, and it has been in this condition for quite some time. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Klett?
I guess my question is, well, I understand that the 34-foot setback is really the average of the adjacent properties to their enclosed space, correct? But in this case, like the home to the right, for example, has a large set of stairs that project past. And the applicant's site plan and or survey does not really show that. So it's hard to get a sense of what's the actual built line on the street. Like, for example, even the house in question that's in front of us, their steps, they have 5 rises or 5 treads that stick out probably 50 inches from that house. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of where's the actual built line. If you look at the delta between what they're proposing versus what's existing, it's not really 7 feet. It could be 2 feet or 3 feet because those steps do stick out quite a bit. So I don't really understand how far out the steps are, how far out the neighbor's steps are, and what we're truly looking at is a built line that exists. And you may not have that answer. I don't think the survey shows it.
I don't. The survey that was provided, excuse me, as many surveys, they don't include all the details of adjacent properties. They simply focus on the subject property. I think that we can certainly look at the photographs, and that may give us some point of reference. And of course, we can inquire with the petitioner, and they can give us their vantage point as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, the petitioners may introduce themselves and state their case.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Gulo. With me is my wife, Burgundy. Our builder, Rob Gates, is still in the waiting room. I'm not sure if anybody's able to allow him to join, but he's ready to join us as well. There he is. Thank you. First off, thank you for taking the time to meet with us tonight. For all the prior correspondence and guidance leading up to this meeting, we really do appreciate your time this evening. Our goal with this project is to enhance the safety, the beauty, and the livability and value of our home. We believe that enhancing our home this way also helps to promote a more friendly neighborhood community by providing that visible communal space to welcome our friends and neighbors. We also want to maintain as much of the traditional aesthetic of Royal Oak neighborhoods as possible. And granting this variance for us would help to increase the value of our property and enhance the beauty of our neighborhood. While we recognize that the original porch was remediated to interior living space at some time before our purchase, confirming the question from earlier, this project would be relatively consistent with a setback of several other homes on our street. And I do have addresses and measurements if you require those. Our project plans have received high praise and support from our neighbors. While we haven't talked to everyone on our street, we've definitely received a lot of positive feedback and encouragement from our neighbors who look forward to seeing the improvements here. We did purchase this home in 2007 to create a safe and loving space to start a family and raise our child, and we want to continue to grow old in the community that we love. So tonight we humbly ask for your blessing to grant this variance and help make our home into the best place for our family to continue to grow our roots here.
Thank you. Mr. Gates, as part of the petitioner's presentation, would you like to introduce yourself and add anything?
Hi, yes, Robert Gates here, the builder, general contractor. Just wanted to back up with what the Guyo said regarding the other setbacks of the other homes on the street and the inconsistencies there. And I know there were some hurdles we had to go through to get the first plan approved, and I think we made some changes, and we still wanted to go back with this this proposal of the covered porch that you see now. So not much more to add, just here in support. I really want to help this customer of mine get the porch they want there.
Thank you. All right, is there, oh, yes.
If I may, Mr. Klatt proposed another question earlier that I wanted to provide some clarity on with the front steps coming off the front of the house. That's a 5-foot distance from the front right now, as you can see there. So when you draw that delta between the existing front steps and the porch that we're proposing in the plans, it's about a 2-foot difference there. I just wanted to provide that clarity there.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioners? Ms. Sukin.
Is there anything preventing you from converting that enclosed porch into an open covered porch?
It's part of our living room. So, we would have to do significant reconstruction on the house in order to achieve something like that.
So there's no wall between that and your living room?
That's correct.
Continuous?
Yes.
Any other questions? Ms. George?
Is that enclosed porch area insulated since it's part of your living room now?
Yeah. One of the first things that we did after we moved into the house and arranging furniture was I poked a couple holes in the drywall to see if there was actually insulation in there, and it's all insulated in the walls and inside the crawl space underneath as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Gavin?
This one's actually probably more for Mr. Murphy. So supposing this variance is granted tonight, will that in any way change the status of the way the city treats the enclosed front porch? Would the city still treat that as, front porch, non-living space front porch?
If you can repeat the question one more time, make sure I get the understanding correct.
So you said for houses where the front porch was enclosed, but the city has no record of it, it is still treated as non-living space, even though it has, in the case of this house, realistically been converted into part of their living room. So if this variance were to be granted tonight, would that in any way change the way that that enclosed portion is treated? Would that would still be considered non-living space?
We were unaware that is no that it's part of the habitable space. So I not certain I have a direct answer for you at this very moment. It's a different than we've been viewing it, and based on the records that we had. I don't know that I have an exact answer for you at this point.
All right. Ms. Sukin.
As a follow-up to that, if this was considered part of the living space, how much of an incursion would there be into the front yard setback by the porch, the proposed covered porch?
The proposed addition, the unenclosed covered porch, is 7 feet. So if the house with its living space met the minimum required front yard setback, this proposed covered porch would comply with being 7 feet out from the front face of the living space. Again, if the living space was at the appropriate location. We're being notified that it's now further out than was originally recognized. So if this house were compliant and they were proposing to add the unenclosed covered front porch as shown, it would comply with the ordinance requirements, yes.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we're gonna, before we bring it back to this side, we don't have a full board, we're short one person. We may have a full board next month or we may not. But you need 5 affirmative votes for the variance to pass. Would you like us to go forward or would you like to delay a month for possible full board?
Yes, please, let's proceed tonight.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back to this side of the board. Is there any discussion and or motions? Mr. Klatt.
Discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Ms. Robinson seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Klatt.
I think the practical difficulty exists in, well, the city interprets it one way, but the applicant purchased it as living space and they've enjoyed it as living space. And as I mentioned before, that delta, I think that the applicant mentioned the porch sticks out 5 feet, they're asking for 7. So really it's a 2-foot delta. So the impact on the street is pretty minimal. And they're simply looking to construct a porch, which is allowable per the ordinance. So even though there is a bit of a variance required, I think it's warranted here.
Ms. Robinson, do you have anything to add? Oh, you're muted.
That catches me every time. I agree with everything Mr. Klatt just said. The fact that it was already enclosed on that front porch when they bought the house makes a hardship there for them to have an actual front porch, which really is kind of traditional for that neighborhood. And the fact that it's really, when you're looking at it, it's really only going about 2 foot past their bottom step that exists right now. I also looked down the street and kind of pulled up on, what would that be? Would that be Hudson right there? And eyeballed it all the way down and to see, is that really going to stick out and be an eyesore? And really I could not see that in my opinion. And I think just adding that open porch even makes their house look better and the whole neighborhood look better. I'm in favor.
Okay. Anyone else like to add? Mr. Gavin?
I was on the fence about this, but I think Mr. Klatt's reasoning has brought me around to being in favor of this, solely because that's the house they bought. It had been, the wall had been knocked down and it had been made living space. But I do think this kind of begs the question of maybe the city needs to take a look at how we view these properties and because I'm sure this is not the only enclosed front porch where the wall was knocked down and the living space was expanded, and we may need to take a look and see how we're treating those. So I guess with that though, I'm in favor, but I just kind of wanted to suggest that to our administration here.
Any other comments? Ms. Zukin?
Well, I was originally opposed to this extension because I felt that it was going to actually extend a lot further than everybody else's house, and it wouldn't look right. But if Mr. Klatt is correct that we're only adding 2 feet, I guess I don't have a problem with it anymore.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I too am support of this motion. The practical difficulty is there. Had they been the ones who actually done the knockdown and the infill without any city notification, I might be a little bit different. But since they bought into it, I sort of feel for them, because I agree having a front porch is sort of a nice amenity for any homeowner to be able to sit on and relax and say hello to their other neighbors. So because of that, as well as other things that have been stated, I'm for this. And with that, we'll go to the vote. Mr. Reddy,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Klett,
Yes.
Mr. Gavin,
Yes.
Ms. Sukin,
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
And I also vote yes, so that's unanimous again.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wow.
This-
Thank you.
Enjoy your front porch.
Thank you. This means so much to us. We really appreciate it. God bless.
Have a good evening. Yep. We'll move on to the next case, 21-09-40, 318 East Lawrence Avenue. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
This site is located on the south side of East Lawrence Avenue. And as you can see from the photograph on the screen in front of you, it's improved with a 2-story single-family home, and it has a detached garage to the rear. And a portion of the house, and I'll hover over it, a portion of the house at its southeast corner contains 1 story of living space, and we'll also jump to another photograph for, well, we'll go to the survey first. This portion of the house is 1 story, and as you can see from the survey, it's located at its nearest point. It's located 3.1 feet from the side property line. And the ordinance requires there to be at least a 5-foot setback. So the current circumstance is non-conforming, and the petitioner is proposing to construct a 2nd-story addition over this 1-story portion of the house. And the petitioner has done an excellent job illustrating that on a series of elevations, so we'll go to those. A 2nd-story addition above that 1-story portion of the house, and the 2nd-story addition would accommodate an expansion, a new bedroom, a new bath, and above what's an existing kitchen and existing porch. The ordinance states that a non-conforming structure cannot be expanded in a non-conforming manner. The 2nd-story addition is in line with the exterior walls below, so the 2nd-story addition maintains that 3.1 foot distance from the side property line. It does not comply with the minimum required 5-foot setback. So the petitioner is seeking a variance in order to expand or alter the non-conforming structure in a non-conforming manner, and they're seeking a waiver of 1.9 feet from the minimum required 5-foot side yard setback. We did not receive any written or audio public comment for the board's consideration at this meeting tonight.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? No questions? All right, seeing none, may the petitioner introduce themselves as well as go ahead and state their case.
Thank you. Hello, I'm David Jenkins. I'm going to be discussing this with my architect, John Sarkeesian. He should be in the meeting as well. We wanted to make this addition because we have a growing family and we need a little bit more room. We like the house and the location in Royal Oak. It's close to some local schools and relatively central location for us. We found that adding the room on top of the kitchen would flow well with the existing structure and wouldn't negatively affect the look of the neighborhood. We found that we thought it would be a good alternative to searching for another 4-bedroom house in the location we liked, and that also fit our budget. And I'd just like to thank you once again for having us here tonight.
Mr. Sarkeesian, would you like anything to add?
Yes, hello, members of the board. My name is John Sarkeesian from John Sarkeesian Architects. We felt that the choice of locating the addition over the existing made sense from an aesthetic, from a functional aesthetic point of view, from a functional point of view, and we felt that it didn't negatively impact the neighbor to the east, because we are behind their house and we're there's quite a large distance between the two homes. And we looked at the possibilities of, of trying to do it without asking for a variance, which would have required, the bedroom itself is not a very large bedroom. It would have required offsetting the bedroom, the approximately 1.9 feet. I think as you get a little further back, it might allow us to do a little less than that. So as you can see, it's a pretty small bedroom. Graphically, we have a queen size bed shown in there. So it's not an opulent bedroom. So we looked at the possibility of offsetting that, but that would have been to try and keep a similar size bedroom, we would have had to cantilever the west side. And when you look at the rear elevation, it just would have looked like a completely mismatched addition, because it would be straddling the first floor, but off center. If you go to the south elevation, you'll see the one on the right, upper right. Yeah, so we would have to take that gable end element with the two windows and slide it over to the left on the drawing to meet the ordinance. And we felt that it would be complicated structurally. It wouldn't be durable. There's more flashing details, more, all kinds of conditions that, are considerably, worse ways of doing things from a construction perspective. So we felt that this would be, a viable way of approaching this without really harming anyone else in terms of the neighborhood. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Is there any, Ms. Zukin?
This one's for Mr. Jenkins. Was that nonconformity in existence when you purchased the home?
Oh, yes. Yes, it was.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? No one with any other questions for the petitioner? All right. Well, then before we bring it back to this side of the board to discuss, want to let you know there's only 8 board members, so we're down a board member. You need 5 affirmative votes to pass. And while we may have a full board next month, we may not. So it's totally up to you as to whether or not you want to go with us discussing it tonight or pushing it off to next month.
Let's vote on it.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to this side of the table. Discussion and or motion. Anyone? Ms. Zukin.
I will move to approve the variances requested.
Mr. Klatt, you second? All right.
Yes.
The requirements to expand a non-conforming structure are met here. The existing character of the area is maintained. It's going behind the house. It really won't change much from the front. There's no additional parking required. The size is comparable to adjacent uses. Construction materials are compatible with the existing building, and the expansion won't have a negative effect on the neighbors. And I believe they've showed the hardship because it was a pre-existing nonconformity. It wouldn't do justice to the building to have to move it over. And I think it's totally acceptable in this circumstance.
Practical difficulty? Is that what you meant, Deborah?
Yes.
Thank you.
There's no yes, there is practical difficulty. Thank you.
Mr. Klatt, anything to add?
I think Ms. Zukin summed it up quite well. It's a all too common condition where we have an older home that may have been compliant per an earlier ordinance or may have been built slightly skewed on a lot, and the applicant's simply looking to, they're stacking directly on top. They're not compounding the situation, and it's built at the rear of the home. It should have no negative impact on the neighborhood. So I think it's a good design, and I'll be in support.
Other comments? Nope, no other comments. All right, I too will also be in support, as been stated already, for all same reasons. And with that, we will go to the votes. We'll start at the bottom this time. Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Zukin,
Yes.
Mr. Gavin,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Klatt,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
Mr. Eddy.
Yes.
And I too will vote yes, so another unanimous decision. Congratulations and enjoy your new addition.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next case, case number 2109-41, 31,800 Woodward Avenue. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
This site is located on Woodward Avenue. It's currently a vacant commercial building that was previously occupied as Pier 1 Imports for many years. And in August, the Planning Commission granted special land use and site plan approval for the petitioner to demolish the existing building and construct an automated drive-through car wash. The zoning ordinance provisions provide the Planning Commission with a great deal of discretion over a variety of standards, but it doesn't allow them the ability to waive the maximum allowable driveway width. And the petitioner, the way they've laid out the building on the site and the functionality, they've placed the stacking spaces in the front yard adjacent to Woodward Avenue. They've also accommodated the vacuum stations closer to Woodward Avenue for those exiting out the building, and it's left them with limited room to provide employee parking, and they've done so by providing the required employee parking parallel to the building off of or adjacent to the public alley. Again, most instances you find 90-degree parking off a public alley behind a building, but due to the constraint, they're limited to providing 3 parallel parking spaces. And in doing so, they have a driveway width that measures 75 feet across in order for vehicles to be able to pull in off of the alley parallel to the alley. The ordinance allows for commercial sites to have a maximum driveway width, whether it be off of a traditional roadway or off of a public alley, to limit the driveway width to 30 feet. The petitioner has the 3 spaces totaling 75 feet, so they're seeking a variance related to the driveway width. Car washes are required to provide a minimum of 16 drive-through stacking spaces, and these are for vehicles that are queuing up for service, and that is the point where they enter the building. You can see, and I'll hover over them on the screen in front of you, there are 4 stacking spaces prior to entering the building. Then there are 2 service lanes. Each of those lanes has 6 stacking spaces. So with the 4 and the 2 service lanes of 6 each, the petitioner, they meet the minimum requirement. There's also a requirement that for any drive-through facility that there be an escape lane adjacent to a required stacking lane. So again, these 2, which I'm hovering over, are the lanes dedicated for vehicles queuing up, stacking up to get into the point of service of the building. There's a requirement to have an escape lane adjacent to the drive-through stacking lanes, and I'll hover over that area. This is an area where it would be required to have an escape lane, a continuous escape lane, so that a vehicle that comes onto the property, they realize they don't want to wait for service. They have the ability to drive on the escape lane, bypassing all of those in queue for service, drive continuously through the escape lane and drive out of the site without getting service. But what the petitioner has done is they've designed, and this is what was approved by the Planning Commission, what they've done is they've designed this as being an additional stacking lane. So they're seeking a variance to waive the requirement for an escape lane in lieu of them providing more stacking spaces. And they believe that's more appropriate to their business model and the functionality of their site. We'll let them explain that in a little bit greater detail. However, I will point out that if a vehicle does enter off of Woodward Avenue onto the site, they do have the opportunity, seeing if they didn't already see it when they were on Woodward Avenue, they come up to the site and they determine for one reason or another they no longer want to enter the stacking spaces for a queue of service. They do have the opportunity to continue to drive through the property and access the public alley. So there is that alternative aspect of a vehicle coming onto the property and being able to escape via that dedicated 2-way travel lane all the way from Woodward Avenue to the public alley. But the petitioner is seeking a variance in order to waive that dedicated continuous escape lane so that they may have more stacking spaces. We did receive 3 written comments, which are included at the end of your report. And we do also have 1 voicemail message that was provided that perhaps Ms. Schwanger can play for the board at this point in time.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. So the zoning board committee.
I am commenting on case number SP 210941, Zoning Board of Appeals for Tommy's Express Car Wash at 31800 Woodward Avenue. My name is Cynthia McAvoy, and I'm the property owner of 3722 Hunter Avenue. My property line is 33 1/2 feet from the center of the public alley entrance on Hunter, which is directly behind the proposed car wash. The petitioner is requesting waivers for the car wash to fit on the lot. I am opposed to this. Our zoning ordinances are in place to ensure the safety and quality of life for the neighboring property owners and patrons. This car wash is simply too large for the property. On August 3rd, the petitioner held a meeting for the neighboring residents, which was a nice gesture. Unfortunately, my questions to the petitioner regarding sound decibels, barrier protections, water runoff, chemical pollution, and and excessive lighting were not answered. I believe these are valid questions considering the design of Tommy's Express Car Wash and with its operating hours of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. I have enjoyed living in close proximity to Woodward Avenue for the last 29 years. However, the traffic and speeding on Hunter Avenue has increased greatly since the addition of Barrels and Vines. Another in and out facility will add even more traffic. I ask the zoning board to please carefully consider the negative impact on our neighborhood before granting waivers to the petitioner. I thank you for your time.
That completes the public comment regarding this.
Thank you. All right. Is there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Ms. Sukin?
Mr. Murphy, if you know this, is an escape lane a safety issue or is it merely a convenience issue for the customers?
No, it more focuses on, I don't know that I would refer to it as a convenience for the customers, but to prevent vehicles from backing up on the site into an adjacent public right of way, and to allow for that continuous flow, so that if someone elects not to enter the line of service, the stacking lane for service, they have the opportunity to bypass all of that and exit the site, so that there are fewer vehicles waiting in line for service.
Okay, then in the drawing that you showed, and you indicated that there is a possible escape route for somebody coming in off Woodward in the front of the building. Is there anything preventing the cars from stacking in there also? Because they're showing 6 in each lane, why couldn't there be 7 and therefore block that?
You're referring to vehicles stacking up at this point?
Right.
That may very well occur. The requirement is that there be a dedicated escape lane adjacent to the stacking lane. So I'm going to refer to this area, this whole pattern where someone can just bypass those waiting. There may be an instance where vehicles do back up. If someone wishes to not get that service, they can keep going and go straight out to the alley and go north or south. The petitioner, we'll let the petitioner describe their business model and why they believe that this design of having more stacking spaces versus an escape lane, why they believe that it's a better fit for their business model, and how they believe their business is different from a traditional car wash.
Okay, so my last question then is that pass through that you indicated, that cannot be considered as an escape lane because it's not adjacent to the other 2 stacking lanes.
That's correct. It has to be a continuous, dedicated, and adjacent to. The adjacency is the correct word. So that it runs parallel all the way, adjacent all the way through. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gavin, then Mr. Moore.
I guess just to kind of follow up on that, even if there, even supposing it were only 2 escape lanes, or two stacking lanes and an escape lane, if people were, 7 or 8 cars were stacked in each of those lanes, the escape lane may or may not help with, alleviating that stacking problem there, I would imagine. Right, Mr. Murphy? Do I have that? Like, assuming it met the ordinance and had the escape lane along there, if you have enough cars stacking up, it wouldn't matter if there was an escape lane there or not, just because everybody's waiting
it certainly wouldn't make the car wash function any quicker, but it would allow someone who thought they wanted service to be able to bypass and just exit the site without getting service at all. But it doesn't do anything for their business model. Correct.
Mr. Moore.
So I guess that was a similar question that I had. So without that adjacent escape lane, if somebody is in the line already and they decide, okay, this is taking too much time, they have no other way to get out of line without waiting to go all the way through? Is that what the purpose of that escape lane is supposed to be for?
Well, the purpose of the escape lane would be if someone comes onto a piece of property, they all of a sudden realize there are just too many vehicles waiting and they want to leave. They want to escape. So they use the escape lane. Or the service is taking too long in the stacking lane and they decide, I don't have time for this, and they want to simply drive into the lane adjacent to them and escape, exit the site. So those 2 scenarios.
Okay, I guess that second one was the one that I just wanted to make sure I have that clear, because I'm thinking of it like a fast food line. I've sat in some before where I'm like, okay, this is taking too long.
Yes.
And I have the ability to turn out and go around and exit. So once people are in that line without having an escape lane with what they're showing on their proposed plan, there would be no exit at that point. The only option is when they first turn in. Once they get in the line, they're stuck.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none, the petitioner may introduce themselves and state their case.
Mr. Chairman, Dennis Cowan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I am here on behalf of Michigan Express, which is the owner of the Tommy's Express franchise at this location. I don't think you can see everybody, but in the room with me are our full team. Cliff Lunny, who is the principal of Michigan Express, Jordan Jonah, who is a representative of the property owner, and Eric Williams of Stonefield Engineering, which did the site plan and all the landscaping and engineering design. So we can answer any questions, but I think I can handle most of the questions that you've asked, especially about the escape lane. So first of all, we were very pleased that last month the Planning Commission gave us approval of both our site plan as presented and as you are looking at tonight, as well as our special land use, because all car washes, like all other drive-through facilities, including fast food restaurants, require a special land use. We were also pleased we were able to meet with the neighbors. Most of them were from Hunter Avenue at Emmanuel Baptist Church over on Normandy and Woodward prior to the Planning Commission meeting. And in fact, the reason we're asking for the escape lane to be changed into a stacking lane stems from that meeting and some issues that the neighbors brought up. So that being said, let me talk. We have two variances. They're both pretty straightforward. So let me talk first about the escape lane. We are asking for this for one simple reason. It really is not about functionality. It is about public safety. We all are aware of the situation at Starbucks. I live 3 blocks away from there. Even though they met the requirement, it's a very popular place. Maybe it's the configuration, I'm not sure, but we meet the ordinance. We are asking you to allow us to convert that third lane into a stacking lane so we can exceed the ordinance. We believe, based upon the Tommy's Express model, we're probably never going to need 24 stacking spaces. Because you just can't fit that many through. If you do the time management study, you can't fit that many through. We hope we're that popular, but the question is, do we need it? We qualify. We believe we have enough, but because of that Starbucks situation and the neighbors at the meeting brought up, if we come down our street and want to make a right turn, is it going to be stacked up there? We don't believe it will be, but on the side of safety, we believe that we would ask you to approve that variance. That will be, just so you know, a stacking lane that you would use what's called a Tommy's Pass. It's digital, attached to an app on your phone. I do want to say there are actually 3 ways to, quote, escape from the site if someone changes their mind. And by the way, I think the decision about going to a car wash is much different than the decision about going to a fast food restaurant. Maybe you're trying to, maybe you're in the middle of the day, you got to get somewhere, you need to change your mind. Maybe you didn't get a hold of your friend who you're ordering for, so you had to pull out of the lane. I think when you make the decision to get your car washed, you can see the stacking lanes from the street as you enter, so you'll have a relatively good idea of how long it's going to take. So first of all, as you pull into the property, you're pulling in on the Woodward right-of-way. If you see that you don't want to go in line, you could proceed north on the right-of-way because that is continuous, and there are 2 driveways to exit back out onto Woodward Avenue. So you can make the decision there. As Mr. Murphy pointed out, you can go straight ahead and exit on the alley. And then on the southwest corner, you will have to wait in line, but there is what we call the safety valve exit, which means you'd have to hit a button, tell the folks you're not going through, you've changed your mind, and then you can proceed out that way. So there's actually 3 escape routes. So we believe that for purposes of public safety, not that we have an unsafe business by any means, but to eliminate any possibility of stacking onto Woodward, we'd be allowed to make that conversion. And by the way, not having an escape lane would be consistent with the other 2 Woodward Avenue car washes. Neither one of them have an escape lane. I think in December, you actually allowed the addition of a 3rd lane with slightly different circumstances, but the net effect was allowed a 3rd lane at the Jack's Car Wash. That was in December. So again, we would ask for your approval on this issue, primarily based on a public safety concern that also our neighbors had, and we wanted to be able to respond to those concerns. The second issue has to do with the net effect is 3 parking spaces at the rear. So I'd like to start out by saying you would be hard pressed to find any business on Woodward that does not have parking in the rear, either for customers or for employees. Right now, we have 9 spaces in the rear. We're reducing it to 5. The Shell station across the street was approved for 8 spaces on the rear of their building. Right across the alley from us is a small 4-unit apartment building. They have, I think, 4 or 5 direct spaces across from us, and then they have an area behind a dumpster that has 3 or 4 more that also join the alley. So I think just as a fairness issue, all along Woodward, there is parking in the back that is pretty accepted. As long as it's not excessive, we don't believe this is, especially since we're reducing the number of spaces. So we're not asking for or creating any injustice vis-a-vis any other property owner in the district, particular with respect to the alley. And the other reason we are putting the spaces there is there's no question, this is a practical difficulty. So first I want to say that Eric Williams from Stonefield did an outstanding job in citing this properly and make it flow correctly. The first basic decision was the building. We wanted to put the building as close to the alley as we could, but we had a setback we had to respect so that all the stacking would occur on the Woodward side and not the residential side. So once you do that and you position the building in that manner, so you're not being a burden on the neighborhood, then with landscaping requirements, with the other requirement that we had to put the 4 vacuum spaces as far away from the neighborhood as possible, which we were able to do. When you have the need for a dumpster enclosure on site, which is required, when you take all those requirements, the only reasonable and practical place left to place these 3 spaces was parallel in the rear of the building. And so we believe that's we were trying to meet every requirement possible. Obviously, the main one was the location of the building. Then we had setbacks, then landscaping, vacuum spaces, enclosure. All those things contributed to the reason why we're putting those 3 parking spaces in the rear of the building. So I think I've covered all the issues. I hope we've answered all your questions, at least the preliminary ones you had, and we'll answer any other questions that the board has. And also, just on a personal note, I want to thank you for having back-to-back meetings so you would allow all the applicants to be able to hopefully be approved and then move forward with their projects in a timely manner. So thank you very much for your efforts these last 2 evenings.
Yep. Does anyone else in your room have anything to say, or?
No, but they're available if need be. I just want to also add, we had a very extensive discussion with the Planning Commission. They added a couple things to the site plan that we agreed with, and they went through a lot of questions about flow and things of that nature. So at the end of the day, they were satisfied enough to give us their approval. So wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Gettin and Mr. Moore.
I'm curious about I'm presuming this Tommy Pass is something like a fast pass at Disney, you know, like you get in line and you get to kind of jump ahead. If I got that right?
Cliff, do you want to answer what that is? Yeah. Hold on. I got to turn my sound down so he can speak and not have feedback. So Cliff Lunny's going to answer that question.
Yeah, so the Tommy's Pass, and before I say thank you for everyone's time today, we really appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you. The Tommy's Pass is basically, it reads your license. So it's off of an app that we have, a mobile app. So if you had a Tommy's Pass, the outside 2 lanes, the one in discussion and then the one next to it, you could drive up, it would read your license plate and the gate would open and then you'd proceed right through the car wash. So there's really no communication with an employee or anything from that standpoint. So that's what the Tommy's Pass does, and it really increases flow and efficiencies.
Okay, because one of the questions I was going to ask you was before I heard about this Tommy's Pass was if it was if you had the opportunity, like say, you know, the lines weren't that long, were you going to kind of try and keep cars in the other 2 lanes rather than in that outside lane, so it could serve as an escape lane, you know, at least on a temporary basis, not an officially designated one, but could serve as such. But if it sounds like you've got a need for having it scan in order to open the gate, it probably ends up not being able to meet that need or meet that. I guess not need is the right word, but not being able to do that, if you would. So.
Yeah. So there's the I don't know if Mr. Murphy would put it up real briefly, but the outside lane that's discussion right now would be the Woodward lane, right? Let's call it the Woodward. It's parallel to Woodward, and then the lane next to it. Both those 2 lanes are set up for Tommy's Pass. So as you would enter as a customer, it would be your choice to go to either 2 lanes. We certainly could have the ability. You know, we would never close off a lane or anything like that. So it would really just be the customer's choice as they came in, which lane they would choose to go through. The first lane is just set up for someone who's just might want just a one-off car wash, but about 75-80% of our business really becomes membership based.
Okay, and I guess as I'm thinking about it, even if it were a temporary escape lane, it wouldn't function as such anyway because of bottlenecks once you get up to coming around that curve anyway. So you'd still be waiting so you could go all the way through. But you know, okay, I appreciate the clarification. So that helps. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Yes, I was wondering if you could explain more about the one exit that requires somebody to press a button to be let out, so they can't just drive out if they've changed their mind. Is that?
Yeah, no, actually they can drive out. So what happens on that lane is typically in the car wash side. We really only use that for the most part if someone has an oversized truck or something from that standpoint where it's not going to fit into the car wash. Our car wash operates a little bit different where we're on a conveyor belt system. And the easiest way to explain that is the conveyor belt system is similar to if you're at Detroit Metro Airport and you take the walkway where it can help get you across the airport. It's very similar. You would drive up. That really helps with efficiencies there. So, but there are times where trucks or something are a little too large and they just drive right through there. There's no, there isn't a buzzer or anything that we have to click up. There may have been a little miscommunication from the 3 lines where it would line up on the pay lane where there is a gate there. But there's no gate there. So if they did make it past the original gate and they decided they wanted to change, they're able to just drive right straight through there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Ms. Robinson?
So I'm not familiar with this kind of car wash. Everything is pretty automated here. It's just, like you said, you drive onto a conveyor belt kind of thing. It's all. Okay, thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. So it's a very it's a very high-end technology car wash, and it is all on a conveyor belt. So nobody's in your typical car wash. You'll see there if you're ever going through and they tell you to kind of move your tire this way and a little bit that way, and someone's guiding you in. We don't do that. We have a conveyor belt that's very wide, and you just pull right up and you'll drive right on, put your car in neutral. It tells you when to put it in neutral. You go through the car wash in about a minute and a half. And then on the other side of it, we don't have anyone that dries your car off or anything from that standpoint, and you just exit. So there's no backup from that standpoint either. So it's a really, advanced technology car wash, even from the outside where you enter in. And we even have it where if you didn't want a membership, but you just wanted a car wash, we have a lot of people that just get familiar with that and will just buy, a simple individual car wash off the app itself, just to go through the convenient lanes because it's the throughput so much quicker.
Any other questions? Mr. Moore?
I think you just touched on this, but I want to confirm this because I actually have done a lot of research about the Tommies because there's one being built in my hometown. And so just out of curiosity, I have done some research on it in the past. This does move significantly faster than a normal car wash, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think you mentioned like a minute and a half. That's what this one will operate at.
Yeah, and we actually do have the ability to speed it up or slow it down. So let's say it's a very busy time, and we have what we call our mission control, which is kind of the bump out on the building, where we actually have views of the car wash itself and the outside. So if the traffic's building up or anything like that, so we can actually speed that conveyor belt up to increase the speed going through there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question, and I applaud the effort to cite this as you could with this site, but considering all this is sort of bringing upon problems of your own by picking this site, why was not another site, say even Pasquale's site, which is larger and nearby, picked? Are you able to speak to that, or?
Sure. Woodward is as you everyone on the board obviously knows this, is a challenging street with different owners on buildings. In our parcel alone, or in that little corridor, I think there's 4 different property owners of commercial real estate right there. So it is very difficult to find real estate up and down Woodward that can accommodate. The Pasquale site you're talking about was significantly priced, way out of a car wash's site, and it's been vacant since done a land lease on that. So that property was actually done on a land lease from Big Boys, and I think they were going to, or there was talk of doing a Big Boys, and now they're looking at trying to figure out what they can do on the site just to the cost of that property. So unfortunately, that site still sits vacant just because of the price tag on that right now. So we think this is a great spot. It flows very, very well. The building's been vacant for 3 years with nothing really promising, that's come up in the last few months. And we just think it's a really good fit, and the flow works very, very well for the site. So it's definitely, we use every inch as best we can. There's absolutely no doubt. Right now, if you look at the space, there's very, very little landscape. I think it shows 5%, but we'd probably argue it might be a little less than that. We're significantly increasing it, Eric. I believe it's almost 18%, 15% is what we're increasing the greenbelt area in there. We're also taking the right of way and improving some safety stuff there too, and easing, so you just can't race right in off of Woodward there. you'll see the bump out, and that becomes a green belt there too. So we think the site works marvelously for us, and we're very excited to be in front of you and show you that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for?
Where's shit. Okay.
Mr. Cowan, were you going to add?
I wanted to add, if I could, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to add one more just in response. When we went before the Planning Commission in anticipation of questions about our site vis-a-vis other sites, we are more than twice as big as the super car wash across the street, which has been there for a number of years and is only on 0.225 acres. And, you know, I've been to that wash pretty often because it's close to my house. They don't have really any problems, and they're dealing with less than half the amount of space that we have. So we're pretty comfortable, in addition with, you know, the layout that was done by Stonefield, that we have more property than you know, the other particular location. So we're pretty confident that this is right size for the site. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Before we bring into this, as stated previously, we only have 8 of 9 members here. We're short a member. We may not have a full board next month, or we may, but you need 5 votes in affirmative to grant the variances requested. Would you like us to proceed, or would you like to delay it another month?
Mr. Chairman, we would like you to proceed.
Okay, thank you. We'll pull
You
to
and the
this
board.
side. We'll pull to this side for any discussion and or motion. Mr. Moore.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Klatt will second. Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Originally, I did have concerns specifically regarding the escape lane, but I think all of my questions and concerns were answered here. The speed of this car wash will be significantly greater than other car washes, and there are multiple ways to exit off the site. So I'm comfortable moving forward.
Mr. Klatt.
Driveway standpoint, this is very similar to the 2 cases we heard and approved last night. We felt it's more important to actually properly park the site versus the driveway width. And as Mr. Cowan stated, it's very common in the alleyways off Woodward. And then to address the stacking, I also agree with Mr. Cowan that we want to avoid Starbucks at all costs. I think it's maximize the paved area to get the cars off Woodward on the site. And furthermore, our company's designed 2 similar modern car washes on the east side over in Utica and Chesterfield, exact same setup. You have 3 maneuvering lanes without a stacking space. I'm sorry, without an escape lane. And to the best of my knowledge, they function properly and fine. So I'm very familiar with that setup, and they work fine.
Any other discussion points? Ms. Robinson, then Mr. Gavin.
I'm not in favor of this. I can see that being a real problem if there was a mechanical problem and all those cars that are all stacked up without that escape lane, that was the one that's closest to Woodward, that you're going to get stuck in there. I see that as being a problem.
Okay. Mr. Gavin.
I'm going to be in favor of this. You know, I just wanted to kind of, you know, I agree with the comments earlier about, you know, reasons to grant it, but I just wanted to state that from a practical difficulty standpoint, this is I mean, it's on the Woodward corridor. The lots there are just odd shaped. I mean, this one is diamond shaped. It makes it difficult to work with. I think they have done the best they could to you know, take into account the concerns of the neighboring property owners. I was happy to hear that you had a community meeting with neighboring property owners in order to address their concerns and took all those factors into account. I know there's still some objections to this, but I don't think, I tend to think that a lot of pretty much any business that would end up going on Woodward, you know, would have some detractors. And you know, the avoiding taking all the steps that you can to avoid the stacking problem, I think is very good. And then I also agree with Mr. Klatt on the driveway with, that's just the nature of the beast with these commercial properties and the access from the alley. That's the only way you're going to fit those spots in. So I think there are practical difficulties there as well. And the shape of the lot is not due to anything that the petitioner has brought, that it's been that shape for many years. So I think they meet all the non-use variance requirements.
Any other comments? Ms. Sukin?
Well, I have to say, I'm not at all excited about another drive-through on Woodward, but the Planning Commission has approved that use, and we're limited to these two issues. And I agree with what has been said before about the driveway. I'm glad that there's parking there so that they don't have to use Hunter to have their employees park. And then the escape lane, I'm happy that there's another stacking lane, because otherwise I see it being a backup problem like Starbucks, and they are exceeding the requirements, and they wouldn't even have to be here on the escape lane if they chose, to use it as an escape lane, because they have enough stacking spaces. So I think I'm going to have to approve it.
Mr. Reddy?
Yeah, I'm gonna be voting in favor, but I just wanted to address the people who wrote in and called and like, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm not ignoring what you had to say, but I think those concerns were regarding the planning commission's decision, and we're only deciding on the driveway and the escape lane at the moment. So I'm in favor. I think the extra lane is gonna keep cars off of Woodward, so that's great. That's all. But I do appreciate the comments. Thank you for writing.
And any other comments? Ms. George, do you have any, or?
I just think that it's a well thought out plan. I know that there's no dedicated escape route, but they've accommodated for the option of people leaving if they bail on a car wash. And I would rather see something go into Woodward than have another vacant building. So I approve.
All right, and I will also approve this as statements said regarding the parking as well as the escape route. And I do agree with Mr. Reddy. Although the comments, we are not ignoring any of those from the public. Those unfortunately dealing with light, noise, and anything else are not related to the issues that we're voting upon. So therefore, although we appreciate those comments, we can't vote upon those things in relation to this. We can only vote upon the practical difficulties. And with that, we'll move to voting. Mr. Reddy?
Yes.
Ms. George?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
No.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it passes 7-1. Congratulations. And best of luck to you. Hopefully, there'll definitely not be a Starbucks situation, or otherwise we'll have all the residents after us. All right. On to the last one. Case number 21-09-42, 909 South Lafayette Avenue. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
This site's located on South Lafayette, south of Lincoln. It's improved with a 2-story single-family home with a detached garage. A portion of the dwelling, and I'm going to hover over it, a portion of the dwelling at its northeast corner contains a 1-story segment of living space. Again, the overwhelming majority of the house is 2 stories, except for that portion. And that area has a living space on the ground floor, and it has a flat roof deck that's accessible from the second floor. I will jump to page 9 of the report. We'll look at the survey. And the survey is going to illustrate to us that the property has a very shallow depth of around 66 feet on the north side and about 74 feet on the south side. So it does not meet the minimum required depth for a lot of 100 feet. And that results in the fact that measuring from the rear of the house, that 1-story segment from the rear of the house to the rear property line is only 17.5 feet. And the ordinance requires at least a 35-foot rear yard setback. So the existing condition is non-conforming. The petitioner is proposing to construct a 2nd story of living space to accommodate a bathroom and a walk-in closet directly above that 1-story portion of the house. The 2nd story addition is in line with the footprint of the ground floor. Therefore, the additional 2nd story floor space, I'm going to zoom in on their floor plan here. Their floor plan to accommodate a master bath and a walk-in closet, that addition expands the non-conforming circumstance in a non-conforming manner. So they're seeking a variance to expand the non-conforming structure, and seeking a variance to waive 17.5 feet of the minimum required 35-foot rear yard setback in order to accommodate that 2nd story addition. The petitioner, they did provide some photographs, so I want to jump to those. I think they're very helpful to give you a vantage point of the current circumstance. Again, you'll see 2-story house, that 1-story portion adding the 2nd story to match the rear elevation and being too close to the rear property line. We did not receive any written or audio public comment with regard to this variance request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? None. All right. Seeing as such, petitioners may introduce themselves as to who they are, where they live, and go ahead and tell us about your proposal.
Hi, thank you everyone for taking the time to meet with us. We're the Kendalls. You'll notice there's only one of me in front of you right now. My wife is in another location for work right now. She is also on the call. We're also on the call with our architect, Zach, as well. So we're relatively new homeowners. We moved in October. We rented in Royal Oak for about 2.5 years or so, but really loved the area and loved the character of the neighborhood. So we decided to buy a home that's very close to downtown. As we began kind of thinking about kids and what we want to do kind of in the next few years of our lives, we really wanted to look at trying to add a bathroom to our house. We only have one full bathroom right now. We looked at options in the basement. The layout didn't really make sense. We have very short ceilings down there. So this area made the most sense for us, just to put it off of our master bedroom, kind of on this deck that really we thought we were going to use, but haven't really used quite that much for a few reasons. One, it's a shingled area up there, so we don't want to put any sharp objects like furniture on top of it to risk potentially puncturing the roof in there. We would also have to bring guests through our own master bedroom in order to bring them up there, and with our own front porch as well as our rear seating area that you can kind of see in the picture here. We didn't really think that made sense. And then lastly, it can be a little bit of a fishbowl up there. We can see into 5 separate backyards, all of which have privacy fences separating them, and it can be a little bit strange to kind of sit up there and look down upon our neighbors that are having kind of a private meal in their backyard. So we felt like this option for the bathroom made the most sense, both from a practical perspective and an aesthetic perspective as well. And then Anna, if you would like to say anything after me, feel free. Otherwise, we can hand it over to our architect, Zach, to answer any of the technical questions.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Ostroff?
Hi, yeah, Zach Ostroff. Give you my address?
Sure.
At 2640 Water Oaks Drive, West Bloomfield, 48324. I think Austin summed it up pretty well in terms of what he said, being a fishbowl and everything. The only thing I'd like to say is that from an architectural perspective, we're not making the nonconformity any worse. It's just going in line with with the existing footprint. And in fact, if you look at the photo that Joseph had up before with the railing and it's kind of weathered and everything like that, I think that the proposed rear elevation, the roof lines and everything will tie in real nicely. And actually it'll look more like it probably should have always looked versus, with kind of that weird second floor level, kind of looking into the neighbor's area. It's also pitched slightly, which is kind of, hard to turn it into a deck or living space up there as well. So I think, the architecture just tie in real seamlessly. And if you have any other questions, I'm here to answer.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioner? Not seeing any. Okay, then before we bring it back to this side of the board, just like to remind you, we are down one member. You need 5 affirmative votes to pass. We might have a full board next month. We might not. So you can either elect to postpone 1 month or let us decide right now. What would you like to do?
I think we'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it to this side of the table and discussion and or motion. Mr. Gavin.
I'll move to approve the variance as requested.
Mr. Klatt, I'll take that as a second.
Correct.
Mr. Gavin.
It's I think the practical difficulty just speaks for itself. The lot's really small. There's just nothing more to it than that. It's I think the design itself, is just it's simple, it's basic. They're not asking for a lot. It's going to do justice to the neighborhood, and it's not anything that they built. They're just dealing with the houses they purchased it. So I see, I think this is one's really straightforward.
Mr. Klatt, anything to add?
Mr. Gavin summed it up well. It's nearly identical to the case we just approved over on Lawrence. Same exact situation. So I'm in support to this.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anyone? No one? All right. I will also be in support of this. Practical difficulty is definitely there with the small lot. I actually used to rent just right around the corner on 9th Street about 20 years ago. So I am very familiar with this. And I can totally understand their practical difficulty there. On a side note also, Mr. Klatt might be the only other one on the board member who might remember their neighbor coming before us who wanted to expand their house and put a deck on that 1-story addition right there. And your previous owner denied them, didn't want them to get that. So it's interesting now that you're the new owner and you're getting rid of the deck because of not wanting the fishbowl experience. So, but with that, we'll move to voting. Mr. Reddy?
Yes.
Ms. George?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
And I will vote yes, so pass unanimously. Best of luck to you on your addition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All righty, that concludes all the new cases for new business. Any other business, Mr. Murphy?
No other business.
All right. Seeing as such, there's not, and we already did the public comment. Is there any motions?
To adjourn.
Well, obviously, to adjourn. Mr. Gavin, Ms. Zukin with the second. She just got in there. Any discussion? Probably not. All right, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 All right, until next month.
Yep.
Assuming
See you
there's
then.
no nays, of course.
Thank you for your patience for 2 meetings in a row.